All right. Okay, we're back with episode 2.
Woo!
All right, so we're going to start with the plot summary. Basically, in this episode, I'll read it out. The crew of the Enterprise meets up with the Sulkovsky, a ship which was observing the dying days of a supergiant star before losing communications. Let's see. The Sulkovsky's own hatches to space are opened after an intoxicated woman asks if they have pretty boys on the Enterprise and that they are going to have a blowout on the Sulkovsky. After an away team investigates the vessel and returns home, a mysterious intoxication spreads throughout the Enterprise, revealing the crew's inner demons, desires, and general horniness. As the crew battles its own steadily increasing drunken state, which spreads on physical contact, Wesley Crusher takes over the engine room and narrowly the crew avoids disaster. The episode ends with an inspiring couple of sentences by Picard and everyone pretending that it didn't happen. Is that about accurate?
Yeah, seems about right.
All right, so yeah, this is the second episode of an entirely new show, and I find it a little weird that they
go straight from, this two-parter that has all these super deep musings on humanity to here's an episode where everyone acts like they're drunk.
Yeah. So we're going to try and make this a little more organized than the first one. We'll take turns going through the good, the bad, and the odd for the episode. Do you want to go first, Dylan, for anything good that you liked out of it?
Sure. I guess I would say that the beginning did have some, genuinely creepy moments when they first beam over to the Silkovsky. I think I said that right.
Well, Wesley Crusher pronounces it like the Sokolsky. So.
Well, I'm just going to say whatever. It's Russian. I don't know how to speak Russian.
Okay. But anyway.
But it does have some, genuinely creepy moments, like when Geordi goes into the crew quarters and there's just that, door that keeps opening and closing off in the distance. And it's like, wow, that's actually kind of creepy.
Yeah.
That was all I really had to say, so go ahead.
First thing on my good list is, despite some of the stuff we're probably going to complain about coming up to the bad, this episode, it really does accomplish some of its goal of, establishing the characters a little bit. The last couple episodes have made me feel for Geordi, and I didn't remember all that stuff. Geordi kind of gets drunk first when he comes back,
He's the sad drunk.
And, yeah, he's like, I want to see for real. And Tasha is telling him, you see better than us. And he's like, better isn't necessarily better, or whatever. However he says it. More isn't better, yeah. And I feel bad for him. He's a sad little man right now. The last, in the first 2 episodes of the show, he's just I don't know, he's in pain, and he's sad, and he wants to not be blind, and yeah. What's your next good?
I guess I really liked, out of all the goofiness in this episode, which we'll talk about in a couple minutes here, I really liked, just Data in this episode was always amusing.
Yeah, the jokes.
Oh,
what was it? There's this one part where he tries to tell a joke. There was a young lady from Venus whose body was shaped like a p, and then he gets cut off.
Yeah, because it was like someone singing a limerick in the shuttle bay or something.
Yeah, everyone's, yeah.
That was great. And then, even when he somehow gets drunk, and he's, explaining how he's not different, and he's just like, humans have fingerprints. I have fingerprints.
If you prick me, do I not leak?
And then when Picard walks off and he does his little, I don't know what he tried to do, but he just falls over.
Oh, Data? Yeah, he falls over on the bridge. It was good. Yeah. Most of the good is just funny stuff, besides the Geordi development. I love the part, there's a part where Dr. Crusher is intoxicated, and Picard walks into his office and she's just sprawled across the desk like, Captain, I think I've become infected.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
That's one of my favorite parts of the episode because it's just so obviously oh, this is a thing.
This is being ridiculous. Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know. I'm trying to think of any other really big positives. It was mostly just Geordi was the only character who really got developed. Wesley got developed as like a desperate little boy. Because
Who
there's
wanted attention, yeah.
in the first bit of the episode, there's a scene where intoxicated Geordi comes into his room, and Wesley's like, "See, I have this machine to pretend that I'm on the bridge," and he has like the captain's voice recorded and stuff, and it's like, "Wesley, engage," and I was like, "That's so pathetic." Wesley Crusher is one of the most pathetic characters.
Yeah, like he's like genuinely smart, but like people don't really give him a chance. Is kind of how I saw it. But
Yeah.
he is kind of obnoxious though. Like especially like we'll see later on. Like he has some like fairly like just gosh, shut up.
Just the fact that he has like a pretend bridge thing. Like he sits in his little room and pretends that he's on the bridge, and he has the captain's voice speak to him, and it's like, this is really strange.
Yes, it is. Okay.
Anyway,
the only other good thing I had was like this kind of leads into one of my bad things too, I guess, but there's a scene with Data and Tasha in her quarters or whatever.
Oh.
And she goes into like this just it's kind of out of left field, honestly, but she goes into the story about how she was like abandoned as a kid and she ended up with some like what did she say, like a rape gang or something?
Yeah, there's an episode later in the series that we'll eventually get to that talks about her home planet, but it was not a good place.
It was just kind of like, because she was like always, like throughout most of the episode, she's like the goofy drunk, and then suddenly sad drunk.
Yeah, she has a backstory to her. It was pretty depressing. Made that scene with Data almost sweet. But yeah, go on into your bad, I guess.
But yeah, then I guess like I'll just segue into the bad part of that. That scene was just weird. Just like what the hell?
Describe
like of all
the
the people she could be hitting on, it's Data. There's just something seriously strange about that. And then how he's going into how he's been trained in or has multiple techniques or something. It's like this is just getting way too weird, way too fast.
Yeah, especially with characters that people just met one episode ago.
Yeah, it was strange, and it was just kind of off-putting and awkward.
Yeah, a lot of I mean, the main bad things that I have are kind of all similar. Like it's just there's a lot of really corny dialogue in this episode.
Oh yeah, that's true of a lot of the series. That for the first couple seasons. The dialogue is super corny.
Like there's the part where Geordi's saying like, "Help me to not give in to the wild things getting into my mind. Help me to see like you do. I want to see in shallow, dim, beautiful human ways." And just there's lines like that are almost like Shakespearean or something. It's really strange.
Yeah.
And it sounds super unnatural when people speak it.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree with that. Like a lot of the lines are like that. Like even in the first episode, there's a lot of like really just stilted sounding lines.
Yeah.
The actors just aren't used to doing things yet, so they're still like really stiff and proper sounding.
Yeah, other bad stuff. It's just dialogue across the board is just really strange.
Yeah.
Wesley is the main bad. I just hate Wesley, and he's so bad in this episode. Because there's the point where he takes over the ship somehow. He blocks off a doorway with his little device, and then the entire crew can't get to him, and he takes over the whole ship.
You know what I was wondering during that whole thing? This is kind of segueing down into the silly. Why didn't they just use the transporter to get in there?
I know.
Did they have to go through like, this whole like weird circuitry thing to siphon off the power?
Yeah, I thought about that while Wesley was locked into the engineering section. And I was like, well, someone could make an argument that maybe because they knew that they were all like wasted by the virus that was getting to them, maybe they were afraid of being teleported by some drunk dude.
I suppose, yeah, but it was just like at one point I was like, why didn't they just do that? Like they've not given us a single reason why not to, and we know the transporter is a thing.
Yeah, and this is kind of the only other bad I would say. Well, I guess it goes into the silly. Is there any other bad stuff that you have before we go to the odd silly?
The biggest one for me was there's just a complete tone inconsistency with this episode. Because, like, the beginning is, like, this sort of creepy, like, what's going on thing. And then it's just, like, completely ridiculous. And it goes back to being serious. And it doesn't know what it wants to be. Like, this is one of those episodes I feel like would be better suited to a show like Farscape or something, where they're more used to making just completely off the wall, like, silly episodes that have no real purpose.
And that's like too, like I will say, like, I love The Next Generation, but this already this early, like, this is, I can't believe that this is the second episode of the entire show. Like, Star Trek had been off the air for 20 years, and the second, like, episode of this new show to start the new era is like them getting drunk. It's just so.
Remember, kids, don't drink alcohol.
It's such a weird creative decision.
Yeah, I think they just wanted to tie back to the old series because that was
which it does.
But yeah, it is just kind of like, hey kids, don't drink alcohol and be a Starfleet captain.
Yeah, that brings us to, like, the silly. I already mentioned, like, Wesley pretending that he's on the bridge with recordings of people's voices. That was pretty weird / bad and silly. I really enjoyed Data correcting people all the time, which he seems to do a lot in the early episodes so far. Just in the first couple, he just corrects people's grammar all the time. Like
with the sucking out, blowing out thing with the vents or whatever.
Yeah.
The hash, I mean, not the vent.
Yeah. Data is good.
That was funny. Like, yeah, the guy who plays him is, like, really good, like, for these, like, first few episodes compared to, like, most of the other actors.
Oh, yeah.
He's consistently, like, enjoyable.
The music, I would say, is still really weird and kind of silly.
Kind of cheesy, but there's no moments, like, in the first episode where it plays the theme again as the saucers like 2 minutes.
Yeah. That's really weird when it did that.
Mm-hmm. I guess one thing I will say, this was under my bad, but it is more kind of, I guess, silly. They really have poor containment procedures on the Enterprise because they know Geordi is infected, and yet the only thing they do is put him down in a bed. They don't even bother restraining him, and he just gets up, takes off his communicator, and walks out. And Crusher's like, I don't know what happened.
That was one of my. I wasn't sure whether they put it under the bad or the odd, but, like, just even in the beginning of the episode where it's all creepy and they're on the other ship, and then they're like, all right, time to go back. And then I was watching it, and I was like, there's no quarantine procedure. Like, something went clearly wrong, and they're just like, we're not going to quarantine anybody. Just come on back home.
Well, they do decontamination. Like, there is
in the transporter, yeah.
They, like, talk about decontamination and stuff, but
that's true, but it just didn't work.
Well, yeah, and then, like, they don't, like, restrain Geordi at all, and he's just free to leave. It's like, what?
The weird thing, another odd thing was the fact that for most of the characters, when they're infected by this whole little disorder thing, it's constantly referred to as being, like, intoxicated or drunk, which basically leads to them neglecting all of their duties and or taking over the ship or sitting there throwing stuff like a little kid. But then Riker is fine. Like, Riker keeps doing his stuff, and he's not that affected.
Like, he starts to get there, like, near the end, but he just...
It's a little inconsistent, and I just thought it was weird that the whole idea of, like, we're drunk, let's throw isolinear chips up in the air. Woo! Like that one engineering guy.
Yeah, the
assistant engineer.
The assistant chief engineer. This is actually the first episode where we know who the chief engineer is, because they don't do it in the first episode.
Yeah, that lady. I wonder if she's going to die or something. I don't remember.
Yeah, because I know at some point Geordi becomes the chief engineer.
Mm-hmm.
So something has to go down. I'm not really sure what, though.
Yeah, my overall summary and, like, opinion would just be this is very silly. It's hard for me to even talk about it.
Well, that's what I'm saying, too, is that it doesn't quite know what it wants to be. It's, like, trying to be serious, but at the same time, it's just like, this is an episode with a virus that makes people drunk. Like, I just feel like they did it too early in the series, so they're not, like, comfortable enough to just, you know, let loose and just make a silly episode.
The only character it sort of paid off for was Geordi, learning that he was really tired of being blind and seeing through his visor. But for everything else, it's just silly, especially because you don't know these characters yet. I mean, we do because we've seen it before.
But yeah, like you just don't know like who these people very well. Yeah, the only other person where I actually just thought it was funny was Data when he first gets drunk and he's just like goofy as all hell.
I will say I enjoyed Picard randomly walking into sickbay at the end again, and like talking to Beverly about how they need to resist having sex, basically.
I just like how he walks in. He goes, Beverly, you will address me as captain.
Yeah, like there's amusing stuff. There's some funny moments.
But it's just not enough to get over the strangely serious tone of the episode.
Yeah.
Right. So before this gets like too overlong, there was one random soundbite you wanted to play.
Oh yeah. I'll put it in a second. Is there anything else you wanted to say?
No, I think that covers about all of it. The only other thing that I noticed was kind of weird was every time someone touched someone else and passed on the virus, there was a weird like high-pitched whooshing cue noise that I noticed. Like it's very faint, but like every time someone touches, it's like whoosh.
Excuse me.
It's just kind of weird, and
I think it was surely like a storytelling device to make sure you knew that something was spreading.
Yeah, I just felt like it was kind of unnecessary though.
Yeah. Also, I think my Steam sounds played in this, so sorry to anyone who's watching if they heard random noises. Yeah, I wanted to play this because it's really funny, and this is how we're going to end it. There's a scene where Picard and Dr. Crusher are super intoxicated with each other, and I don't remember what the context was. They were talking about how they're intoxicated and everything, and then Picard makes this laugh. Okay, I just played it a bunch. He makes that laugh, and I had to like freeze it and rewind.
I did the same exact thing. Like I was watching it with captioning, and it captions him as clearing his throat, which is
I don't know. It was weird.
Yeah.
Like the rest of the episode, it was just weird. I don't know.
I think that's like the best way to sum up this episode. It was just weird, and not in a good way.
Yeah. Love Star Trek, love Next Generation, but I'm looking forward to future episodes.
Yeah. It would be like if they like going back to like the Farscape comparison earlier. It would be like if they had the pilot episode of Farscape and then immediately jumped into the Crackers episode from season 2. And anyone who's actually watched the series, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the next one we're going to do is episode 3, Code of Honor. I'm not sure exactly which day we're going to do it, but anyone who wants to follow this will find out. Yeah. Anything else before we call our quits?
No. I think I'm good.
All right. Farewell, peoples.